What's up, everybody? This is John from AU Pack Mule, the OG of Westeros, Obi John Kenobi, and I'm here with ManaroGeekTV. We're going to talk about our favorite book from the A Song of Ice and Fire, do some questions, discussion, and thank you so much for everybody that's in the chat for joining me. We've got Broke Black Man is here. Lav was first, of course. Sam Sand and Catherine Cronin, all the way from the far east. She's about as far as east I think anyone I've ever talked to. JD the Dragon is here. Thanks for being here. And I hope you guys enjoy this. And if you have any questions as we go along, Isaac Jacobs is also here. Don't want to forget him. Just let us know in the chat and we'll cover those as well. We're going to be doing 10 questions random. Manaro has no idea of the questions that I'm going to ask her, so this is going to show how smart she is. And I do want to say thanks for being here, Manaro, because as a veteran of the United States military, it's my honor to have you on, not only as a fellow GOT fan, but just here representing the military, and thanks for your service. Would you like to say hello and tell us what's going on with you, what's going on with your other ventures, and what's going on with you today?
Thank you, AU. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's always a great time hanging out with you. What's up to everyone in the chat? Renee, I see you, girl. It has been a long time. I'm so glad to see you, as well as Live, JD, Broke Black Man. I don't know who Sam Sand is, so nice to meet you. And I don't remember who else is on here, but whoever else is on here, and I didn't mention your name, it's not because I didn't want to say hi, but shout out to you. As for me, I am going to start uploading next week. I kind of fell off with the rereads because scheduling I had a lot of conflicts with scheduling, but I'm gonna get back so I can finish off all of the books, and then I will be introducing a few new things as a sneak. I had a sneak peek in my when I did my New Year's live stream. I will be starting a new series called the Auntie Naro Bedtime Stories. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. I plan on doing a live stream on Saturday afternoon around 2 p.m. And I'll talk a little bit more about that and some other things that everybody can start expecting from my channel. And I'll be taking questions if anybody has that. And that's just a sneak peek. I will be doing some things aside from Game of Thrones on my channel, which I'm really excited about. And getting ready to retire, and I'm a little excited about that. It's been a long journey. I'm ready to move on to this next chapter of life. That's about it.
So you said you were getting ready to retire. How many years of service have you with the military?
As of right now, I have 22 years of service. I will retire with 23 years of service. Yeah.
Give it up for Manaro. 23 years. That's an incredible commitment to serving our country. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
So you have other ventures besides the just the YouTube channel, and I don't want to say just the YouTube channel because I have a YouTube channel as well, obviously. But there's other things that you're doing. Are you wanting to promote that while we're here?
Oh, okay. So I do have a t-shirt online. I do have an online t-shirt store that I started just about a month ago. I started selling t-shirts there. Right now I have a few designs up if anybody's interested in going to look at them. I do have an IG page also where you can catch a few pictures of those. It's called Monaro Wear. You can look at Monaro Wear on IG if you have an IG. The link for my store will be in the bio of my IG page. I'll also tweet it out after this
Not
live
to
stream.
interrupt you, Monero, but IG, you're talking about Instagram?
Right. I'm sorry.
I'm the old guy, so I have to be pretty specific. Sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but on the Instagram page is the link.
Yeah. Yeah, you can look it up. It's at Monaro Wear on Instagram. That's the only social media that I have. I'm really bad with social media because the honest truth is I'm not very knowledgeable of social media. So right now I work off of Twitter and I work off of Instagram and YouTube. Facebook is a little bit overwhelming for me. I know a lot of people's like, you should go on Facebook. I was like, I would, but Facebook is still a huge thing for me because I'm not very good with large amounts of how fast it works. And I don't want to get caught in not being able to be as interactive as I should be on it. I don't know if I'm making sense, but Facebook is a very interactive type of platform. And I don't know if I have the fortitude to keep up with how interactive it is, but I do know that it is a platform that I will eventually have to go on. But for right now, I'm on Instagram, and then I am on Twitter, and I also use Google Plus since it goes hand in hand with YouTube. So.
Yeah, thanks, Lav, for posting the Instagram Monero Wear page. That was awesome of you, pulling that in. And yeah, as far as Facebook goes, I totally understand. I actually had a Facebook page under AU Pack Mule, but someone told Facebook, they actually reported to Facebook that I am not AU Pack Mule.
What?
So I have to create a new page.
See?
And
that's the kind of shenanigans I can't, it just becomes so easy for people to do that. And so I don't know that if somebody were to do that, I'd be like totally lost. I know.
And it happened right at the time where my dad was in the hospital, and I just did not want to deal with, creating a fake ID or whatever they needed for me to be verified. So I just let it go. I'm going to have a new page soon. I think it's going to be on February 5th. I'll release the page, but Renee knows exactly what I'm talking about. And you could probably guess who did that, because I don't work with them anymore. So, but
yeah, I've heard a few things. I'm very disheartened by a lot of it.
Yeah.
But this is a new year, it's 2017.
Amen.
You know what I mean? And so I had this conversation with the NSSS before I went on my live stream, because usually before I go into the new year, I like to, if I felt any offense from anyone, or if I offended anyone, I don't like to take that with me into the new year, because how you start the new year kind of like sets the tone for how the rest of your year is going to go. At least that's just my belief. I can't speak for anybody else, but that's just me. So usually if I have any gripes with anyone, I usually like to either squash them, or if it's something that I cannot squash with someone, I squash it within myself. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to let bygones be bygones. I'm going to go into this new year fresh, and I'm not even going to stress about nothing else. I hope whoever it is, all I can do is, let God take care of it. I'm a person of faith. So
there you go.
I let God take care of that. All I can do is control me. So for my part, I will forgive and I will move forward, because I'm not a person who is above forgiving.
Right.
Doesn't mean that I forget, but I'm not above forgiving, because I ask God to forgive me every day. And if I want him to forgive me for my, mess ups, I have to be willing to be forgiving of those who offend me.
Exactly.
So it's a, you know what I mean? It's a whole cycle. Even if you don't hear an apology from the person, it doesn't mean that you can't forgive, because forgiveness is usually for you. It's not for the
Exactly.
other person. So you
Couldn't
have
agree
to be
with you
willing to
more.
forgive in order for you to move, clear. You have your conscience and your heart is clear so that you can move forward, and then you don't have to worry about what's going on behind you. You know
There you
what I
go.
mean?
There you
That's
go.
just okay.
Yeah,
Now
and
I'm
it
gonna
doesn't
step off
do
my
any good
pulpit.
to discuss things with fools sometimes, because then other people get you confused. So we'll just move on from there. But you did a great job of explaining that. That's great. So we're gonna we have something else in common besides our fandom of Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire, and that's from the Westworld and westerns in general. I didn't know that until we did some live streams together about Westworld.
Yes, I am a huge Western fan. I love Westerns. From back, I can remember back from when I was a little girl, a lot of movies on Sundays. Either you were watching a musical or you're watching a Western. Saturdays were those bad voiceover uh, martial arts movies. We in New York, I don't know if that was everywhere else. They used to call them the drive-in movies on Saturdays, and then on Sundays we would have either westerns or musicals. And I am a big fan of both of those types of movies. I love musicals and I love westerns. Um, so anytime, I think that was one of the main things that attracted me to Westworld. Was the fact that it was set as a Western. So if there's, I think I've seen pretty much all of the Western movies that have come out. There might be a few that I haven't seen, but I think I've seen pretty much all there has to.
Well, as you can probably guess, anything with horses, I'm in for. So, westerns is definitely one of my favorites, especially as old as I am. When I was a kid, that's all they made, because they didn't have any science fiction or anything like that. So, yeah, very cool. One of the shows that we actually watched was called Deadwood, and I'm going to ask you about that a little bit later on. But that was another gold prospecting Western show that had some great combinations, and it was historically accurate. So from the people that I talked to at HBO, they were really excited, because all of the stuff that was going on there was dead on, language, everything. So pretty cool.
Broke
So
my
I'm going to
heart.
ask you my first question in regards to A Song of Ice and Fire. If you're ready, you got your
I
six
am
gun
ready.
on. So, so my first question is in regards to the mountain. Gregor Clegane. He's the older brother of the Hound, Sandor Clegane. He, burns his brother's face as a child. He grows up to be about 8 foot tall, over 400 pounds. One of the things that is kind of weird is that he was knighted by Rhaegar Targaryen. Um, he kills his first two wives. He has many, missing servants that are rumored to be, that he killed. Um, do you think that he actually suffered from a mental or a diagnosis that is medical, or do you think it was just was just a bad person in general?
I'm going to say both. I think he was just a bad person in general, but I do believe that he did suffer some sort of, he was no, I mean, because in the story it says that he was known to suffer like really bad migraines. And when Cersei was talking with Qyburn, was it Qyburn or Pycelle? I can't remember right now off the top. I think it was Qyburn and Pycelle having a conversation where he was telling her that he tried to give, that they tried to give him milk of the poppy, but his squire said that he was drinking that so much that he became, I don't know what word I'm looking for, but he was pretty much used to it. So it didn't really have that much of an effect. So it wasn't really working for him when he had been poisoned by the red viper. So I think the fact that he suffered from those migraines, which probably might have been as a result of his massive size, because I think he is the tallest man recorded in Westeros history.
Right.
That might be close to gigantism, right? And I think people who suffer, who are known to have that, I don't know if I don't know if it's considered a deformity or if it's considered a handicap, being gigantism. That they do suffer, issues with their limbs.
Sure.
And it might be a reason why he was that he had all of those migraines. Now, could those migraines have contributed to the fact that he is such a prick? Probably. But I think he was just, I just think he was just an evil person, just because he could be, because he knew, because of his size and because of his power. I think he was, because he wasn't all that stupid. When you read about him, he wasn't all that stupid, because he knew the effect that he had on people. So, I can't hear you.
I was going to say, I appreciate, did you hear me say goodbye to Renee?
No.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Renee, thank you for being here.
Oh, Renee's gone. Okay, yeah, I'm over here not even paying attention. Later, Renee.
So as far as the gigantism, Andre the Giant's the only real example that I could use of modern history in regards to that. And I know he had, emotional issues that he had to deal with as well. If you don't know this, I have a condition that's familiar with most of the people in the chat, called gout from Duran Martel. He suffers from that as well, and it's extremely painful. And my wife will tell you, when I have a flare up and I'm in pain like that, I get really, really irritated. I get so grumpy. It's not hard for me to understand when someone's in pain that they could be like that. But he did it so much that I think it was just a nonstop, constant issue with him that he had to deal with. So. You still with me?
Okay. I think I don't know. Like I said, I do believe that it was a contributing factor, but my thing is, I understand being irritated when you're in pain. I can understand. Nobody wants to be in pain. Nobody wants that.
Mm-hmm.
But my thing is, when does it stop being a reason for your behavior? You know what I mean? Because at some point,
after
when do you ever exercise empathy? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, when I'm in excruciating pain, I'm like, you know what, don't talk to me. Maybe, just let me work this out. But I have been where I have been in pain to the point where, I still can, have empathy, because, the people around you are trying to empathize with your pain. So they're, it's hard when somebody you care about is in pain and you can't alleviate it for them. And so you're trying to be helpful. And the person who is in pain, even though that's what's happening, you're still irritated. And it's not necessarily that you're irritated at the person, you're just irritated at the fact that you're in pain. And sometimes you just want to be left alone. But sometimes you just have to be, sometimes it doesn't stop you sometimes from being understanding that the person who's trying to help you, that's all they're trying to do. And so you try to be kind about it. no, you can't do anything for me. I know you want to help, but right now, probably the only thing that I need right now is just, just to lay down and be still and not talk, and just maybe that might help. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, pharmaceuticals definitely help.
For sure.
The problem that I have is that the ones that they prescribe make me so loopy that I can only take them, once a day. Otherwise, I just become, a basket case. You could ask me a question, I wouldn't even hear you. So, yeah. So we're going to go to another character that's kind of weird, Mel. She's one of the most, religious organizations, I guess, in the show and in the story. She's rumored to be really old. I mean, the D&D folks want us to believe that, she's over 200 years old, but her description really gives her a similarity to the Blood Raven and Sierra Sea Star. Do you think they're related?
I was listening to Radio Westeros is character breakdown of Mel, and the way that when I went back and read it, I'm kind of on board with that idea that she might be Sierra Sea Stars and Blood Raven's daughter. I could get behind that theory, if that's what that is. Because they do describe them as both having heart-shaped face.
Mm-hmm.
I think they described Sierra Sea Star as full breast, small of waist.
Mm-hmm.
And then they described Mel as a narrow waist, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was what the description was. And she has red eyes, just like Blood Raven has red eyes. And she is likened to an albino, or albino, however you say it, just like Blood Raven is an albino.
Milk white skin, right?
Yeah, except she dyes her hair that fiery red, or she uses glamour. I don't know. Either glamour or dye. I don't know how she does it, but she has the fiery red hair. So it's quite possible that, that's her parentage. I can get behind that.
Yeah, actually, Yoke Boy from Radio Westeros did that theory, and it's gained a lot of traction. But like I said, the D&D guys are trying to get us to believe that she's even older than both of them. And Blood Raven's been around for about 120 years in the story. So,
well,
pretty cool.
let me ask this: do you think, if she is a lot older than they are, do you think that she's like their what's that word called? Their progeny?
Protagonist?
Progeny, or how to, I don't know what the word is, but is there she is their originator? Like their features originate from her, if I'm making sense?
Yeah. I'm just trying to figure out. I think
it's called progeny or something like that. If somebody in the chat knows.
Basically, you're saying that she's related to them in a previous ancestry.
Correct.
Okay.
Like they are related. So even if she's not their offspring, but they come from she is in their bloodline.
Gotcha. So Blood Raven is from the Blackwoods, and obviously the Targaryen king. So
and Sierra Sea Star's mother was was she Lysine?
No, they went to Lysine.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of Sierra's parents, and it's not.
I think her mother was from. Wasn't she from Essos?
I honestly, I don't know the parentage of Sierra, but I will look that up and verify. I just thought it would be pretty cool if it was her daughter, if it was
Yeah.
Bloodraven's daughter, especially considering that Christina just joined us. Thanks for being here. Jamie Sneed's here. My first subscriber, Jamie Sneed. Thank you very much. You started a movement. All right. So, yeah, I just think because she is a worshiper of the lore, she's committed to R'hllor, then, you know, Bloodraven is basically considered the great other's servant, and it's just kind of interesting. So,
Yeah.
yes,
Her mother was from Lys.
yeah, that's what Sam Sand says, and
Yeah.
it's really interesting because she goes back there, or that's where Mel from Lot 7 is from. She becomes a slave there, so it's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking a little bit about the morality of what people do in the show and in the books. What do you think the motivation for Ned's breaking his high ground moral code and confessing when he was in the black cells, basically lying to everybody in the whole kingdom about his being a traitor to Robert, his best friend?
He did it to save Sansa. In every instance that he's done that, it's to protect somebody he loves or his family. He did it for Sansa. And if you look at the conversation that he had, when you look at he had just spoken to Varys, right? In the chapter before.
Right.
He had a conversation with Varys, and Varys left that threat hanging there about, because he was willing to die, you know, and he was ready to go out. He was ready to die until Varys mentioned Sansa. And he lied, thinking that he would be protecting Sansa, or, you know, sparing her from being hurt, or them using, well, they were using her against him anyway, which was one of the main reasons why he confessed. But I think that was the main reason why he confessed, to save her.
After the 5 books and the released chapters from TWOW, do you still think the Starks are as honorable as what they're led on to be?
I think they're honorable, but I do think that they have skeletons. All families have skeletons, right? But
Literally.
but I do believe that they come from a good place, because why would so many people stand up for them, or want to fight for them, or want to, you know, protect them, if there wasn't something inherently good about them? You know what I mean? I'm not saying that I don't think people who are under their rule think that they are absolutely perfect. But I think under their rule, their quality of life was good. And as strict as Ned was, he set boundaries, right? He set rules, regulations, and boundaries so that it would benefit everybody under his protection. Because that's what he considered the North. The North was under his protection.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had to enforce rules, regulations, and boundaries in order to make sure that everybody who was under his protection would thrive, and there would be peace. Because when you hear people talk about what it was like in the North when there was a Stark there, they had a pretty decent life. It was harsh, but it was decent. Everybody had a good quality of life. That's not to say that they probably agreed with everything that he did. He was very linear in a lot of ways, in his ruling, but overall, I think that I think overall the Starks are good people, but they still, they have skeletons. They have some things that they need to work on. I think their biggest problem was that they were so strict in their
Punishment.
honor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They were so strict in their honor until it that they weren't willing to see the bigger picture of things. Rob, for example, he was so concerned about Jane Westerling's honor that he broke an oath with Frey because of that. I would have followed the advice that Catelyn had given him. I would have just kept her as a side chick and married even if you never slept with the Frey girl, or you only slept with her once in order to get an heir and never slept with her again. You could have set up Jane Westerling, set her up in a little castle or, something, given her some land, and you know what I mean? Like a normal, you could have set her and her family up to make sure that they were good. You know what I mean?
But that part of the story was all a trick for Rob, wasn't it?
Well, I don't know. I don't know well, from the Westerlings' perspective, yes. Unfortunately, yeah. Jane wasn't part of that trickery, but from the Westerlings' point of view, yes, it was a setup.
I think Tywin set up.
He set that up because he knew that Rob was his father's son. And Rob didn't pay attention. The minute that Catelyn would have said that, I'd have been like, yo, we're going to annul this marriage. I'm going to kick her to the side. And then I'm going to go and get me this Frey girl. Because he probably would have been the one ended up with Rosalind. He would have been with Rosalind. Rosalind would have had the baby. Jane Westerling would have had a nice little piece of property. She would have been cool. Or he could have had Jane Westerling. He could have married Jane Westerling to one of his other bannermen. Made sure she was, set up, her family, blase, because by that time, they were considered, against Tywin anyway.
Yep.
So it could have worked out, but because of his honor, he ended up losing everything. And I think that's the same thing for Ned. When Littlefinger, say what you want about Littlefinger, but he does have some pretty good ideas and thoughts. That's because he's the puppet master. He's supposed to, right? When he went to Ned and he told Ned, hey, why don't you just, say that Joffrey's the king. You're going to be regent anyway. Mm-hmm. You can just, guide him for a few years and then gracefully bow out and then go and say, hey, Stannis, I know you're the king and blase to, whatever the case may be, you and your family would be out. You would have set things up in a certain way. Everybody is good. The land is still prospering because you are the regent. So you make the rules. You do make the rules, and you can make the rules so that things are better.
Basically the same thing that Cersei did.
I don't know about made better, but
well, you know what I mean. As far as she ended up ruling regardless of what
exactly. But Ned, or when Renly came up to him and said, "Hey, I could have 100 swords here," and this was before Robert died. I could have 100 men here. Let's grab the kids and let's go ahead and get things done in place. We need to move quick. No, Ned does not do that. And I think he just, in him trying to be so honorable, he lost everything. Sometimes it's good to be honorable, but to what end? To what end? Sometimes you have to do, and I hate to say it, sometimes you have to do dishonorable things if it's going to reap you a reward in the future. I mean, if it's going to be for the greater good in the long run. And I know that's probably like a utilitarian view. I think that's what it's called, a utilitarian view to take on things. But sometimes I think you have to, you know, dance with the devil if it's gonna end up, you know, reaping you a better reward for everyone in the end. And I think that's one of the Stark's greatest you know, Achilles heel. But I think the kids, well, I won't say the kids, but I think Arya, Jon, and Bran are kind of learning that lesson in a sense. Jon a little late, but I think when he comes back, he's gonna learn that lesson. That sometimes you gotta put your honor in your back pocket in order to get things done. And I'm sorry I rambled.
No. It's important because he actually, you know, we're talking about Ned making the decision. He made that decision really early when he wrote Robert's will, or last will and testament, when he put in the heir part as opposed to Joffrey. That was you know, he obviously thought about that while he was making up that document, and had Robert signed it on his deathbed. So very true. So, you know, we've read 5 books. A bunch of the TWOW chapters have come out. I don't know if you've read any of the prequels, but a lot of reading material. What made you start reading this, and then when did you decide, you know, hey, I'm gonna read this all the way through?
Okay, so when I came back from one of my deployments, I happened to be watching HBO, and I think it was the 2nd season that was coming on. And you know how before this, well, back then, what they would do is they would play they would do a marathon of one season before they start the other season. And
Right.
so I watched the first episode, and then when they were doing the commentary, they said that it was based off of a book by George R. R. Martin. So I went and I downloaded the books. And so once I started reading, the honest truth is I never went back and watched the show. So I just
that's okay.
the books. I read the books, and then from reading the books, I came across, I don't know how, but I came across History of Westeros. Back then they were known as AA Podcasts, and it was Aziz, Ashaya, and Steve.
The freaking Italian.
Italian, yes.
I love it.
And they were doing both a podcast, and they were also doing YouTube. And so they were the first ones that I ever I listened to and watched. And then from there, I started to, you know, get introduced to more people, and, you know, started listening to them, and it just kept going and going and going and going. Yes, rest in peace, Steve, for sure. And then that later in that summer, Dance of Dragons came out later that summer. And so I got that and I read that. And when I read the book, when I read the books, I hadn't realized that the time frame in between all of his releases. It wasn't until I was listening to somebody tell, yeah, it took like 5 years. I said, 5 years? Oh my God. It's like,
what was he doing, right?
By the time I got introduced to Game of Thrones, all the first 4 books had already been out. And luckily for me, Dance of Dragons came out that summer, so I didn't really have to wait that long in between Feast for Crows, A Feast for Crows, and for A Dance of Dragons. But so now I'm understanding the pain of everybody from A Dance of Dragons to waiting for the Winds of Winter to come out.
Yeah.
Because The Dance of Dragons came out like in 2011, I believe it was. Yeah,
Exactly.
2011. And we are now in 2017.
We could rant about that for a long time, couldn't we?
And I am not an artist. I am not a writer. But I can appreciate if you want to put out a quality product. Because it's your product. It's coming from you. And if it doesn't sound right to you, if it doesn't look right to you, you don't want to put it out. And I can sit up here and say, yo, hurry up. But who am I to tell this person to hurry? I don't know how long it took for him to write the first book. Because that dude was writing for TV since maybe
The
before
80s.
I was born.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, and he was coming up with the draft since then. And he didn't release the first book till the 90s.
Yeah, he started creating the story in 91, and then 96 is when the first book came out. So long time, very long time.
So let me tell you, I want him to hurry up, but at the same time, I don't want him to put out a product just for the sake of putting it out, just for the sake of appeasing us. And then we're going to read it and be like, what is this crap?
Because that's what D&D is doing, right? They're just putting it out to get it over with.
Well, I kind of put D&D in their own separate category. For me, what D&D is doing for me is their own fan fiction version of the story.
That's true.
And
that's exactly what it is.
I have to look at it.
Yeah.
I don't compare it to the books at all. And I know a lot of people give them a lot of flack for, things that they don't do. So me, the first time I've actually watched the whole show was this past season 6. And I watched it and I enjoyed some parts of it. Some parts of it, it wasn't so much the scenery, it was more so the plot. It wasn't cohesive to me. And if I am watching a show based on a book, it needs to have at least be somewhat cohesive. It needs to at least somewhat follow the story that has already been told. You're just putting it out visually. You're just telling a visual version of the story. I also understand that you can't put every single character, because Martin has 1,000,001 characters in his books. It's not feasible to put 1,000,001 characters in a 1 hour show. I understand that you have to blend some characters together in order to tell the story. I understand that. That's just the way things are. My question is, why don't you have more than I don't know, 10 episodes? I'm just saying, if you only have an hour to work with, why do you only have 10 episodes? Why not 15 episodes?
Yeah.
I think 15 episodes is a good balance, where you can actually take the time to develop whatever story arc that you're trying to tell, where you don't feel rushed and having to skip things and just throw things in just for the sake of throwing it in, so that you can say that, okay, you threw this part of it in. So I don't know. Fan fiction, that's what I call it. I think
it's just hard for me to justify some of that fan fiction, because they're so close to George. For us, when we don't have the day-to-day connection, but they worked with him for 3 years on this story. He wrote some of the episodes, 1 episode a year. So, they have a close relationship with him. So it's harder for me.
A lot of people said that the show kind of went off the rails after season 3. Because he was no longer there.
Exactly.
And I think I think I don't know what the story was with respect to why he left after the 3rd season. I heard I've heard said that it's because he needed to go back to, you know, finish the Winds of Winter, so he had
Sure.
to leave. But
Yeah, I think he was thinking that he would be able to finish the book and the rest of it before the end of the show, so that we would have, you know, reading material and some reference. But
my thing is, D&D are writers, right? They're
mhm.
professionals, they're writers. You mean to tell me that you couldn't have picked up the book and read it and come up with some sort of a screenplay or a storyboard? Look,
Okay.
I am not by any means a writer for television or anything otherwise. I am not a film writer. I don't understand everything, all of the ins and outs that goes into that.
True.
I am a viewer, but I'm not stupid. I understand some of the mechanics of screenwriting, storyboards,
Mm-hmm.
putting things into film, translating a story. I do understand some of the mechanics, and I think this show is mostly for people who don't read the books. I don't think this show was really meant for book readers. I think the show was mostly for people who don't read the books, because people who don't read the books enjoy it a lot more than those of us that have read the books. Me, on the other hand, I separate the two. I don't think of it as them telling me a story based on the books. I think of them, they read the book and they said, you know what? I have a fun twist on the story. What if we were to do this? Let's see what happens. Boom, action. And I think me separating it allows me to enjoy it in its own bubble. And I don't have to worry about them ruining the experience for me when I read the books. It's like, well, I had a friend ask me, well, don't you feel like you're going to be spoiled because aren't they past the books? And I said, it doesn't matter if they're past the books, because I know what they're putting on right now is not going to be in the book. So I don't have any worries about being spoiled, because most of everything that they're doing right now has been speculated, have been, you know, talked about. We have a million and one theories about almost every character in the books that we care about. We have a million and one theories about prophecies. We have a million and one tinfoils.
Mm-hmm.
If I think this story has been dissected to the you know, millionth degree, that it doesn't matter what they put on the screen. I still don't think it's gonna take away from the book, because the book is the book, the show is the show.
That's the best way to summarize it, isn't it? Two
Yep.
different stories. And I think George has said that many times in that. But so as you're reading, can you tell me, or what you've seen on the show, do you have a favorite armor? I'm a huge arms and armor kind of guy, but I know.
Yes, I have a few, right? I love the Kingsguard armor. I think it's sexy. I liked Tywin's armor. Tywin's armor was tight. I liked his armor. It was like it's like real flashy and, you know, opulent. It just says, I come from money. But I also liked I like the leather that the Northern wore. You know what I mean? It gave me like a Sons of Anarchy vibe. I love the leather that they wore. It was like rugged. Like we hear about our business. We're not about all this pretty shiny stuff. We're just ready to rock. You know what I mean? I liked the leather that they wore as part of their armor. I really enjoyed that. And I also liked the armor that they had for the Ironborn, like the armor that Theon and was wearing.
Really?
I kind of dug the Kraken that was on it. I think they really did a great job on it. Yeah. I love the armor. I do wish though. I do. I'm kind of mixed about the White Walker armor that they had, and it's only because this is the one place I wish that they would kind of do things how they describe it in the books. In that, the way that the White Walker's armor is described in the books wasn't what we got in the show, and
Sure.
I think I wish they had. It's not like they couldn't done some, put some fancy lights, make it glow, some moonlight colors, and you know what I mean?
Well, it was almost supposed to be like the camouflage from Predator, right? Where
Right,
it
right.
blended
It's not
in.
like they couldn't have done that, right?
I think it would have been too CGI, too Star Warsy. I think it would have been harder to pull off.
Yeah, I guess that's the only that I didn't dig too much. I didn't dig it too much, but yeah. Oh, and I love Mace Tyrell's feather hat. That plume on the top. Oh my God.
Historically accurate, but yeah.
That was hot.
So my favorites get definitely Brienne's. I don't know when we first get introduced to her and she's fighting Loras. I just thought it was almost space looking, as far as futuristic. It just had a super cool vibe. And the fact that she was wearing it probably didn't hurt either. So with reading all the stories, and I know you're definitely into the books, what was your least favorite family?
The first one that comes to my mind was the Westerlings. I know. But if I had to really choose one, I'm gonna say the Freys. Yeah.
The Bad Hat Freys.
Yeah.
Yeah, he definitely didn't impress anybody, did he, as far as his ability to make friends and influence people?
Well, with everybody in the story, I try to be, understanding of where a person comes from, right? And the Freys are, when you read the history of the Freys, they came up from nothing to be where they are. But in the society where they live, right? It doesn't matter that you were poor and you became rich. What is your bloodline? Your bloodline is what in medieval society, your bloodline is what determines whether or not you are part of the in crowd or not. Money will get you a lot of places, but people will never let you forget that you are not originally of any noble blood, which the Freys were not. They were not of noble blood when they amassed their power. They amassed their power quite smartly. You know what I mean? How they came up was really, really smart. And just to get a little bit political here, every time I see Donald Trump, I think of Walder Frey.
Wow. The old creepy dude.
And yes. And if you are a Donald Trump supporter, I am really sorry. I don't mean to offend, but that is how I view him. And I view him that way because Walder Frey, all he wants is to be accepted and be a part of the in crowd. And nobody is allowing him to do that. Because he feels that he came from nothing. He built this immense empire, that he should have a seat at the table, but don't nobody want him. And it grinds his gears. It grinds his gears. He will never, ever be considered one of the cool kids.
Even back in the Night of the Seven Kingdoms, he was, still trying to wedge his way into the big kids table.
And I mean, don't get me wrong. He married, some of his spawns off into some of the affluent families, right? But like I said, money will get you in, but it doesn't mean that you'll ever be accepted.
Right.
And that's when you listen to him speak, he's looking to be accepted, but don't nobody really want you.
But sometimes that takes more than one generation, and that's one of the things that he oversees or doesn't take into consideration, because he's so old and he's seen so many things happen with the Blackfire Rebellion, et cetera, that he's just expecting it to happen during his lifetime. And I think that's like I said, just an oversight that he did.
Yeah. Quick. Thank you, Catherine, so much for stopping through. I really appreciate you being here. I will catch you back on the weekend. I think, and that is why I liken him to people, right? To DT, right? When you have people that who feel validated, the only way they feel validated is when people are accept them and make them feel like they are validated by adoration. They want people to say that they are number one, that they are I don't know what word I'm looking for right now, but yeah, you are one of us. You are one of us. You are totally in. It has nothing to do with your money. It has nothing to do with where you came from. You are just in. And you never get that. So your whole life is spent doing a lot of things, even to the point of a lot of bad things, just so you can get that validation. Right? And and you don't want to hear anybody say nothing negative about you. And every time you hear somebody says something negative about you, you're out for blood. And that was one of his. Look, he held a grudge against Hoster Tully for not showing up to his 3rd or 4th wedding.
7th, 8th, 9th. True.
Really? Really? Being the old man that he is, even though Rob broke his oath to you, you trying to tell me that you were not once young and you couldn't have said, Rob, let me school you, okay? I'm 92 years old. I've been around, okay? You are still wet behind the ears. Just because you screwed this girl doesn't mean that you have to wife her. Now, you and I made a deal. And there's a thing to be said about oaths. Now, I can understand that you want to keep, you think you were doing the honorable thing, but this is war, okay? That is not how things work. So I'm going to give you a chance. You can pick whichever one of my daughters that you want. If you want, we'll make sure that Jane and her family are taken care of. But you are going to abide by the oath that you took, because that is what men do. So are you a man, or are you still a boy that is wet behind the ears? You mean to tell me he couldn't have spoke to him and broken it down to him like that, being a man and being how old he is? No, he was petty.
That's some serious wisdom right there. Yeah, I think if he was that smart, he would have definitely been able to do that. But I don't think Walder is that. He doesn't give me the impression that he's that smart.
Oh, he's smart.
I think he's sneaky. I don't think he's smart.
He's sneaky, and well, you gotta be smart for a lot of the petty and sneaky things that he's done. You gotta be. You can't. I would never claim that Walder Frey is stupid. He has some stupid kids, but he himself is not stupid. He's just really old and he's really petty. And he's been carrying a lot of this, you know, he's never really been validated by Westeros, by the realm. Nobody validates him. He has all these kids, he has all this wealth, he pretty much has everything at his fingertips, and yet nobody will show him any respect. Nobody will validate him as a true noble person. So he carries that as a grudge, and he's really petty.
No, I think what you said was incredibly wise, and I have never heard it actually described as something that I would ever expect to hear from Walder Frey. But what you just said was just remarkable. I I wish you were a counselor, because that would be epic to have someone tell someone that in their need of, you know, I'm not making the right decision, and yeah. But as you know,
if he wasn't petty, he would have. If he wasn't as petty as he was, if he really wasn't petty, and he really wasn't he wasn't falling for what Tywin was selling, I think that's probably would have been the conversation, or should have been the conversation.
So I'm going to actually skip a little bit around to Westworld, one of our other favorite shows. Poor Biotic just came in right at that time. Thanks for being here. I couldn't have timed that any better, could I? Yeah. So at the end of Westworld, Ford, you know, obviously gets killed by Dolores. Do you think that was really him? Was it really Ford, or was that the person that he was making in the basement of the house? Or do you think the person that he was making in the house is actually a likeness of him, and he's going to program that person? Does that make any sense?
Yes, makes perfect sense. That's a good question. I'm going to go with that. I think that it was his likeness that was killed. I think he was ready to move on, right? But how do you do that, right? How would you do that? What would be the ultimate game that you could play? Because he still wants, it's still his world, right? Mm-hmm. It is still his world that he still wants to control. So I think the best, and so he could still do that behind the scenes without being seen, if that makes sense. So I think I want to say that was not the true Ford. I think that was the host version of Ford that got killed, and he's like probably back in that house that he had built with his, you know, host family that he recreated somewhere in the or he's probably somewhere in the basement with Wild Bill Hickok. Yeah.
B83.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's actually just the opposite. I think because he is exactly what you said, where he wants to be protecting his legacy and continue his story. I think he was the one that was killed, and the one that he was making in the basement is going to be his recreation, and Bernard is going to help him become sentient. And that's why he created Bernard and allowed him to go through that process in the maze and finding himself and becoming conscious that way, because it'll give him a way to do that for his likeness.
So let me ask you a question. Do you think when Dolores shot him that it triggered something to allow for Bernard to go in and find his host self, and then, because there has to be some sort of a mechanism that's been put in place that should trigger something to happen, right?
Exactly.
So do you think him being killed is the mechanism that
The cornerstone.
right, that sparks that thing in Bernard to say, I'm gonna go down and I'm gonna find? Or do you think that Bernard wanders down there, and then when he sees him, he touches something, or he touches the programming, and that is what sparks the mechanism?
I think he's going to program something like Bernard's son in the recreation of himself to have that anchor point.
Okay.
And it could be a spouse that he pretends that he had, or something like that. It doesn't have to be anything that's true.
Okay, so I have another quick question for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so being that he's now given the host free will, right? Because at least that's the impression that I'm getting.
Yeah, I don't think they all do. I think just the ones that have been able to get through the maze.
Okay. Do you think that Dolores is now going to be the nucleus for controlling? Well, I don't know if I want to use control, but
I think it's going
like
to be Maeve. I don't think it's going to be
Maeve?
Dolores.
Okay.
Yeah. Because Dolores does the exact same thing she did with Bernard or Arnold in the beginning to Ford, and it tells me that she's on a loop. She's not on a conscious effort. She wears the same clothes, uses the same gun, picks the same spot, does the exact same thing as the programmer designed it to be. So yeah. Biotic goes, Dolores is the new Gilly. That's funny. But you see what I'm saying? Dolores is very easily predictable, whereas Maeve does something that is not in her programming, because she was originally programmed to go to the mainland and infiltrate them, whereas she gets off and tries to find her daughter.
Do you think that she is the Wyatt character that's been? I think I heard somebody saying that she's the one that's actually Wyatt.
Well, technically, Wyatt was Dolores in the story. I mean, she's the one that caused all the deaths, which is what they blamed Wyatt for. But yeah, I don't think Maeve has any intention of killing everybody unless they're after, she needs to protect herself or other host. But I think she will use Felix and Sylvester to get the work done that she had done in regards to like her spinal cord and things like that, as well as her other programming to get them off, become conscious or out of the loop. Maeve is Wyatt. What are you talking about, broke? I think you were the one that did the video with me on that one.
I still think that Ford is still the puppet master behind. He's the Westworld Littlefinger. I think he's still the Westworld Littlefinger, and nice. He's just up the ante. He just upped the ante at the end.
When did you know the Man in Black was William?
I did not know that until they revealed it. I did not. Let me tell you, when I had to watch each episode at least 2 to 3 times.
Sure.
Because when I was watching, your reviews, and you started mentioning timelines, it's like, what timeline is everybody talking about? What am I missing? So I would go back and watch. I was like, what is going on? I don't understand what time. Is it this like one continuous story? I'm like, I don't get it. And so when it wasn't until they had the story of when they were going through him and Dolores going to find, I can't remember, but when they went to that town, and I think it was right. I was like, yo, something ain't right here.
Yeah.
Something is suspect. And so when he loses her, and then he's spending all this time trying to find her, and then he finally catches up with her in the town, and he's dressed all in black, I was like, my God. OMG. Man, that was good. That was good. That was a good reveal for me. If anybody figured that out before I did, you are way smarter than me, because I was like, I didn't see it coming. Because I kept thinking the other guy was probably William. The one that he put naked on the Logan.
Yeah, Logan.
I was like, I thought he was the Men in Black.
You could blame Lav for having me make the timeline video. That was actually my most successful video that I've ever done. It got like almost 10,000 views.
Yo, dude, that was like I was totally blown away, because I was like, yo, I did not see that. I was like, what am I looking at a different show than everybody else? Because I don't see this timeline that people are talking about. And it didn't really make sense to me until that time when they went into that. It was Logan, Dolores, and William. They go into that town looking for the old boy.
Yep.
And then I was like, oh, okay. Now, okay. I'm starting to get it. I'm starting to get it.
Yeah, everybody kept pointing out he's got the same shirt. You know, they did the half face with Jimmy Simpson and I forget the guy that played the Man in Black, but Ed Harris. And they put those two faces together. They put their they were saying that he's using the same knife. I mean, it was just like the evidence was overwhelming, but I couldn't change my mind because I already said that Tommy was the Man in Black, which was Ford's brother. And it was only because I had watched, you know, Lost back in the day, and the Man in Black was on Lost as well, and he happened to be, you know, the brother of the good guy. So
I'm telling you, man. And then but you know what? I should have suspected it when he came across old boy. I can't remember his name now. The Spanish dude,
Lawrence. Yeah.
Lawrence. I should have suspected that, because they were with, and it didn't even dawn on me. Even when they both ran up to Lawrence in that town, when Logan, it didn't even dawn on me. Stupid. Hello. He said he knew him from before. Yep. I'm like,
we hunted the natives.
It all made sense in that episode. It all made sense to me after that.
The bells were going off. Right?
I totally missed that.
So as a Western fan, if you could visit Westworld for free, what would be your adventure? And I know you've thought about this a lot. So
actually, I would love to go on a go on a posse and go looking for go bounty hunting.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
I would love to get on and I've only been on a horse once my whole entire life. But I would love to just ride on a horse and go with a posse and be like the Magnificent Seven.
Nice.
I could handle a gun. I can't handle a horse.
I bet you could.
A gun I can do. I can shotguns, rifles, small weapons.
Yeah.
Okay. I can do.
Do you have to carry a sidearm?
Only when I'm in theater. I don't have to carry one here because I'm right now I am an instructor. I was a paralegal. Well, I am a paralegal in the Navy, but now I instruct others on how to become on becoming a paralegal.
Nice.
But when I was in theater, I carried both a sidearm and a rifle. I had to carry both.
I wouldn't want to mess with you. So you were a big fan of Deadwood as well. What did you like about that show, other than it was a Western as well?
It was the first time I watched a show that was that gritty. I don't know if I'm making sense. It wasn't.
No, that's a perfect word, because you don't expect that from a TV show, do you?
No, like I had watched The Sopranos, but I don't know if it's because when I was watching The Sopranos, I expected that from The Sopranos because it's a mafia show. So a lot of the stuff that was going on, I kind of like expected that because I had watched a lot of mafia movies already. So I already expected to see that. It was in line. When I watched Deadwood, now again, I love Westerns. I had never seen a Western done in that fashion before. You know what I mean? And it was like in your face. It was gritty. It was dirty. It was glorious. It was Ian McShane. Can we take a moment to fangirl and fanboy about Ian McShane?
Yeah, total moral emptiness, right?
He was absolutely perfect. He was an asshole. Excuse my French. He was, but he was also a person who carried a lot of demons. I mean, look, anybody who keeps the head of somebody in a jar, a pickled jar, and talks to it, ain't too wrapped too tight in the head. Just
he
saying.
was the only one that Al could really talk to, wasn't he? Sometimes.
Yes.
Because he was afraid that if he opened up to anybody, he would be exposed.
But that is what shows you the humanity within Al. Mm-hmm. Because Al, as far as anybody else was concerned, was ruthless. Didn't have any feelings. He was very cutthroat. Al, when he was with his little Indian friend, was nothing of the sort. Right. And I love the way that he was able to bring both sides of the coin of that character. I loved it.
Yeah, the parts a lot of times where he's closing up the bar and he's by himself, he kind of does this dialogue or monologue, I guess is the best way to describe it. And it just shows his character. I still watch some of the old episodes. Love it.
Let me tell you, when I was waiting for season 3 to come out, mm-hmm. and when they told me there wasn't going to be a season 3, I literally fell out. Because it's like, I was telling somebody,
you mean season 4?
Right, season 4. Yeah. It was like I'm watching a movie and they cut the last 15 minutes off. That exactly, that is what it felt like. I said, at least you could have come back, at least give me a movie to tie everything off. Give me a 2-hour movie, tie everything off for me. Give me closure.
Yeah. Make it a town, bring in the law, do something, right? Close it off.
Oh my God. That was a good show.
Have you ever considered doing any prospecting after watching that show?
No.
It's a lot of work, isn't it?
Not only is it a lot of work, but that's some cutthroat business, yo. The way they was killing people over their fines.
Reclaim, yeah. Claim jumpers are bad people.
Oh my God.
And if they didn't like you, they just called you a claim jumper and killed you, and no law, right?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
It was crazy.
if I still am doing YouTube in the summertime and God is good, I'll do a prospecting video on how to do some prospecting, just for fun, because it's
That would be. Are you going to see that movie called Gold
oh, of course,
with
yeah,
Matthew McConaughey
that's based on a true story. Should be good.
about prospect? Well, that's a movie about yo.
I watch all the gold shows on on TV, just because I like to see what equipment they're using in modern day. And yeah, I don't agree with some of their methods as far as destroying the land, but it grows back pretty quick. Here in Washington, we had Mount St. Helens, and that totally destroyed parts of the state. And yet now it's only 30 years later, and everything's back to normal. There's very hardly any long-term damage, and that's Mother Nature. So
I don't know. I guess when I think of prospecting, every time I hear I think of prospecting, I think of like slave labor. I don't know why I think that. I don't know why I think that. I think, and not so much as when I say slave labor, I'm not talking about slavery. I'm talking about slavery because I think about Africa, because when I looked at I used History Channel back when they used to show history. Just saying, History Channel.
mm-hmm.
Back when they used to do actual histories and documentaries, they had a documentary about how they, a lot of a lot of those countries were colonized because they were digging for a lot of their natural resources.
Sure.
And some of the conditions under which they would subject a lot of these people in order to, find gold, find diamonds, find mineral ores and all this other stuff.
Still goes on today, right?
Yeah, still going on today.
Especially with them using mercury, it's just a absolute death sentence for them to use mercury in processing the gold.
So I mean, so that's what I think about every time I hear about that. But I'm like, I don't know, man. Yeah, they're always. I guess now that's why I don't wear gold. When I saw those things, I no longer wear gold.
It's like the appeal is gone, right?
Yeah, I had a bracelet that was gifted to me that had diamonds in it, and I still have it because it was gifted to me, but I don't wear it because I feel guilty. I feel guilty wearing it.
It's like
because
fur, right?
Yeah, I don't do anything because it's like when sometimes watching certain things kind of like keeps you from, I don't know, it keeps you, but you don't look at things the same as you used to anymore. Like just the other day I was talking to a friend of mine, and she just discovered how eggs are laid. So she doesn't eat eggs anymore. And I looked and I was like, well, how do you think the eggs came out of the birds? I mean, they only have one entrance and one exit out. I don't know how you thought they came out of them. She goes, I don't know what I was thinking. It's just that I didn't expect that's how eggs were laid.
She was blind and now she can see, right? No, I was that way with orcas. I used to live less than an hour away from SeaWorld, and we would go there, and Disney World, etc. But now that I'm in the Pacific Northwest and we actually go see them in the wild and see the story about them being captured, it's just like I would never go to SeaWorld again, ever.
Yeah, so you get my point. That, like, the more and more you become, your eyes become open to a lot of things that they were, and it's not because you didn't care. It's just that either you just were ignorant to the information, or you just never thought about it. certain things that you think are fun or pleasurable to you, but you don't understand the behind the scenes of how it gets to the end result. You're like, you don't get the same joy and pleasure from it anymore, because all you can think about is, well, how did this get here? How did it get to this point? You know what I mean? Even going to the zoo anymore doesn't
have that same appeal.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't
JD
have.
and I could probably talk about this, but when we go hunting and we harvest, food, we actually see the animal before, during, and after the plate, and so it brings a whole different perspective.
It does. I don't know if you've ever seen this documentary called The Faces of Death.
I have not, and it's probably because I would never. That's not one of my, because that's about people dying, right?
That and slaughterhouses. Well,
Yeah.
they have a section in there where they have like they have a segment about slaughterhouses, which is probably why a lot of people become vegetarians, because I think a lot of people didn't understand how the cow goes from being a cow to being the meat on your plate. You know what I mean? And way back in the day, they used to have these slaughterhouses, and they were they had very inhumane ways of killing these animals so that they can harvest their parts. I hate to say harvest, like harvest.
Yeah.
In order for them to, you know what I mean? Because the meat, the meat would go to like meat markets and butchers, and then the skin would be used for like leather goods and other, because they use different parts of the animals for different things that we use every single day.
Yeah.
It's not even so much for food, but certain things that you use every single day had some form of animal part in it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's and it amazed me that I didn't, so many things that you use in everyday life, you don't understand how it got to this end result. I don't know if I have a fascination of watching how it's made on the Science. I think it's on the Science Channel or Discovery Channel, one of those two things. And I've become very obsessed with with watching how things are how it's made. And so
that shows they do a lot of things, but it's simpler than it actually is on that show.
Right. Even so, like, so I'll say, now, I won't lie to you and tell you that I am a vegetarian or that I am vegan. I don't really eat meat, but that's something that I've been that way since I was a little girl. I'm not really a huge meat eater, because I come from a family. Yeah, I come from a family where we killed our own animals. You know what I mean?
I do. I grew up on 10 acres, so I totally understand.
Yeah,
chickens, pigs, cows.
As a little girl, I didn't really eat meat because I, play with the animals, and the next thing you know, they're telling you you're gonna have to eat it. It wasn't a very pleasant experience.
Yeah. So
I didn't really eat meat. That's not to say that I don't eat meat. I do. I just don't eat it. It's like one of those rare things that I'll, every once in a while I'll be like, man, I sure would like a hamburger. You know what I mean?
Trust me, I totally do.
Every once in a while I'm like, man, I really could go for a hamburger. And that's as far as it goes. I like turkey on Thanksgiving or any other, holiday that they have turkey. And I do like chicken wings, and I like some fried chicken. But to say that it's something that I eat meat on a daily basis, that's a lie. I don't. I probably eat meat like three times a month.
Gotcha.
But I do it for dietary reasons, because my doctor says I have to. I'm supposed to eat it a lot more than I do. But again, that's just not, part of my, that's just not something that I do. But I like crunch factor in my food. I like crunchy foods. I like salads. I like crunchy vegetables. I like crispy French fries. Yeah.
Well, this question and answer session really took a left turn. I wasn't expecting to talk
I know, right?
about
I'm sorry.
to
That's what
talk
happens
about
when you put me on
prospecting and
AU. That's what
yeah.
happens.
No, well, for someone as young as you are, to have the wisdom that you do is just amazing. So I really am glad that you were able to make it on, because the stuff that you share is way beyond Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire and TV and everything else. It's life, and that's important. So I really appreciate you sharing what you do, not only about the show, but like I said, life in general is really awesome. Thanks for doing that.
Thank you.
So do you have any questions for me? I know I've been poking and prodding and asking off the cuff. So
how did you get into the Game of Thrones?
well, I used to work for Comcast, the cable company, and they have a representative that works for HBO that comes around. And they work, there's different reps for different channels, but
Okay.
the HBO rep would come around, and she showed us about 4 months before the show came out, the trailer basically. And they do that for True Blood and all the shows that have been released, Deadwood, etc. And so she showed us that, and I saw Sean Bean right off the bat, and that was hooked. I was hooked from that point, because I had just been through a whole Lord of the Rings, fascination. I have tons of memorabilia about that story, and became a big Tolkien fan from there. So he was a good transition from Lord of the Rings into this, and I just fell in love with it. I'm a big history person, so any stories that are historical types, like the Tudors or the Borgias, about the popes and things like that from there. So yeah, I was hooked.
Awesome. I shout out to Sean Bean. I every time I see him, I think about Boromir. I can't help it.
No kidding.
I see him as Boromir, but
sorry, but Don the
plays,
Kraken Rich just joined us, and Sam R09, thanks for being here. Sorry.
No worries. Yeah, I shout out to Sean Bean. He's amazing. I like him. I like historical fiction.
Mm-hmm.
I like historical fiction. You mentioned Lord of the Rings. When was the first time do you remember the first time you read the Lord of the Rings, or the first? I mean, because I'm sure you read it before you watched the movie, right?
I did not. I read The Hobbit when I was in 6th or 7th grade, and I didn't really care for it. It wasn't until after the Two Towers that I became interested in any of it, and it was basically, I was disappointed. I was like, the second movie seems exactly like the first movie. I don't understand, any of this. And I have a really good friend at our church, and he is like the Tolkien expert. He's been a Tolkien fan since the 60s. So he basically said, I understand about the movies, but read the book. So I read the book, and then from then on I was hooked. So I guess it was like 2004. Just became fascinated with the story, and he basically walked me through the Silmarillion as best he could. And I've read that, and I don't know if you know this, but they're making a Beren and Luthien out, will be next, because they've already done the Children of Húrin
Yes,
from the Silmarillion. So Beren and Luthien is next, and that's going to be probably the coolest story, better than I think anything else we've seen, if they could make that a movie, because there's werewolves, vampires, all kinds of stuff in that show.
it's
Plus we
gonna
get
be.
Melkor.
It would be dark.
Oh, definitely. Well, the
It would
Children
be
of
dark.
Húrin is probably the darkest story I've ever read.
Yeah.
That makes Game of Thrones nothing.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. The Children of Huron was pretty dark. Do you Did you ever think about if there were, what similarities did you see between a Game of Thrones and the Lord of the Rings series, if any?
I don't think there's any. I think the Lord of the Rings has a dark side and a light side, and that's the way Iluvatar originally designed it. And I think Tolkien represents that perfectly. The orcs are truly evil. There's no, there's no. I don't have to wear a sigil to tell you that I'm bad. You can just look at an orc and say, that guy's bad. So it's very black and white. There is no gray. Whereas with Martin's work, it's almost all gray. Even like we were talking about earlier with the Starks, there's a lot of grayness there with Robb and Catelyn's decisions and Brandon and all of the Starks from history, and you just don't get that in Lord of the Rings.
I think you do. I think Gandalf the Grey was gray in a lot of sense, because he manipulated a lot of things.
Was he gray because of his power, or was he gray because
I think his character was gray.
Really? Oh, that's interesting.
I think his character is gray, which is why he was called Gandalf the Grey, because he was in effect a gray, because he was a ring bearer, right?
True.
And I think he manipulated a lot of things. I think he manipulated Bilbo for a purpose. Why did he need Bilbo? Why did he?
Well, he didn't need Bilbo until he found out that he had the ring. That was
right.
And you're talking about in The Hobbit, I'm assuming, is the first time he quote unquote needed him and used him.
Mm-hmm.
Because
he did. He used Bilbo.
Yeah.
And by
he used him for his talents, though, right?
Well, what? I'm not saying that Bilbo was stupid, but did they really need Bilbo?
Yeah. He couldn't have gotten
Bilbo
out of the Shire
off.
without Bilbo.
He pushed Bilbo off as a thief, when Bilbo was not necessarily a thief, in a sense, not in the sense that most people think that he's a thief. But I think he manipulated the situation in order to have Bilbo come to be part of the. I just never understood. I never really fully understood. You know what I mean? Why Bilbo Baggins, out of all of the other hobbits in the Shire, why it was Bilbo Baggins? And
well, I think it was just because of his relationship with his mother, and knowing that Bilbo had the same tendencies as the Tooks.
Mm-hmm.
And his otherwise he would have never left Hobbiton at all if he wasn't, Belladonna's son.
You're right. You're right. And I think he also I don't want to say manipulated, but it worked out in his favor with Frodo Baggins.
For sure.
Because when Frodo was at Elrond, and then they had the Great Council with all of the, with all the representatives, and they had the ring there, and they were talking about who was going to take the ring. He could have just said, Bilbo and all of you, Frodo, all of you guys, it's been real. You've done all that you're supposed to do. Peace out. When Frodo says, I will take the ring, he could have just told Frodo, no, you don't have to. You've already taken it far enough. He could have told Frodo, look, the injury that you took makes you susceptible to falling to the ring's dark power, because you were stabbed with a blade from one of the ring wraiths, so you're susceptible to its power. He could have said all of that, but he didn't. You know what I mean? when he was Gandalf the Grey, he operated in a realm of gray. You know what I mean? He toted that line. You know what I mean? He was good, but he was still manipulative. And I don't know, and I'm certain that he was manipulative, thinking that he was doing it for the greater good. Once he became Gandalf the White, if you notice, his method of thought changed, because he no longer carried the persona of Gandalf the Grey anymore. If I'm making sense,
I always thought his taking the white was a lot like giving the champ a belt. You just carry yourself so much different when you're the champion, as opposed to, you know, being one of the contenders. And I always thought Gandalf was, you know, one of the lower level, you know, just like the other three wizards. They were just lower level than Saruman.
He ascended.
Yes, exactly.
He essentially ascended to what Saruman's level.
Mm-hmm.
He ascended. So, I mean, but they still gave him he was still a ring bearer. So, just saying, I think. Yeah, but I think there's a lot of gray in a lot of characters. In a lot of the characters, I think there was gray in Frodo. He, you know what I mean? He had two sides. Even Sam at one point. Look at Gollum or Schmeagol. Mm-hmm. That dude was a whole.
He was outright, yeah.
He was a conflict within him. He was having a conflict within himself.
But he was an anomaly. He wasn't necessarily like, I mean, other than the misbehaving tooks, you know, and stuff like that, it's not. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I just don't see the shady parts of gray you're talking about.
I understand.
We're gonna have to do a different video on that.
Yeah, the gray that is Gandalf the Grey. Yeah. How gray was he?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
How gray was Gandalf?
That's a great point that I really have never contemplating Gandalf being anything other than what he was designed for, which is appointed by Iluvatar to help, you know, mankind.
But with great power comes what?
Great responsibility. Yeah.
Good old Uncle Ben.
We even got a Spider-Man reference. That's crazy. Yeah.
Hey, if you stick around me long enough, I will break them out the woodworks.
I know, that's what's so great having you, even watching you on anybody's channel or yourself. It's just great. Bringing it from all resources, biblical to Spider-Man. Yes. It's just all there.
That just lets you know that my level of geekiness and nerdism is like really deeply embedded.
The best named channel in YouTube.
Let me tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I told my family about that name, they was like, perfect. Nice. They said, "Are you gonna really let people know that you are really?" I was like, "Look, I am 45 years old. Nice. There's nothing else for me to hide anymore. I am who I am.
Loud and proud, right?
There is no hiding behind any facades anymore. What you see is what you get. Pretty much. Awesome. I do have one last question for you.
Sure.
Okay, so what is the one hobby that you have that most people wouldn't know that you enjoy?
Yeah, I think most people know, you know, most of what I do as far as prospecting as a hobby, horseback riding. Yeah, mostly my family, church, stuff like that. It's pretty much all I do. Besides the Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings, yep, just the normal stuff.
Normal prospecting is not. I wouldn't
That's
consider
true.
prospecting.
That is true. That is true. Not everybody
Yeah,
has a gold pan in their garage, right? uh, that actually got started from when I was laid off in 2001. There's a outdoor channel that was started by a guy from Idaho, actually, that prospected, and he found, I can't remember the number of ounces, but I think it was like 800 ounces in California. And he actually started the outdoor channel on TV. And he has his two sons have carried on the club that I belong to, which is the Gold Prospectors of America. And they do everything they can to show that not very much of the gold in the world has been found, and there's still a lot out there. And if it wasn't for them, there probably wouldn't be the gold shows that they have today. So.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the closest I would ever think about that is I'm gonna go to Macy's and I'm gonna look at all the gold on it.
Yeah, if anybody thinks you go prospecting to become rich, honestly, you're probably better off picking up aluminum cans on the side of the road, because it's a lot of work, and I only do it because it gets me out there and in the world, in the woods, where I find a lot of fun. So, and if you go to my Instagram page, you'll probably see, most of the pictures are my favorite pictures. Definitely are outdoors. So
Yeah, I kind of gathered that. Me, I'm giving you some Jesus on my Instagram.
All good stuff.
I'm giving you some Jesus.
Amen. Well, it's been a lot of fun, Monero. Do you have anything coming up that you want to promote with the Not So Silent Sisters, or other than what's going on in your channel? Because we've talked about that too.
Oh yeah. So as the Not So Silent Sisters will be coming on every Monday. That's the schedule. We're going to be doing a schedule of coming on Mondays at 7, barring any other conflicts. That's going to be our schedule. We were on last Monday, so we are scheduled to come on Mondays at 7. You can come and join myself, Christina the Sphinx, Alicia, Lady D, T Baby, the North Remembers, Timo. And I hope, Sam, you're going to come through, though. I'm just saying, Sam, I hope you come through. It'll be at 7 p.m. on Mondays. So hopefully you guys can come and check us out.
Yeah, my apologies. Since Christina's here, you're here. I did not realize your guys were going to do the live stream, so I apologize that mine and yours conflicted there. But
no worries.
Now that I know, between yours and the Golden Girls of Westeros, we'll make sure we don't have any more conflict. Speaking of Sam, she's going to be on my channel tomorrow, so that'll be fun.
I'll be here.
So Mondays at 7, and you're going to be covering what's coming up this Monday?
I think we're going to do a part 2 to the Sam chapter. Sam chapter 45. I mean, chapter 45 in A Feast for Crow. It's the Sam chapter. So really a lot of good stuff in that chapter. A lot of good stuff. Look out for that one. Yeah.
Remind me of which one that is.
That's the chapter where Sam meets Marwyn, and he meets the Sphinx. Alaris the Sphinx. He meets Pate, who is not really Pate by that time, who is actually Jaqen and Hagar. Mm-hmm. He meets Leo Tyrell. So he actually is now in the Citadel.
Nice.
To become a maester.
The Sphinx is the best character in that story, right?
Shout out, Christina.
uh, all right. So I want to say thanks for everybody that's in the chat and everybody that watches later. But you guys in the chat are awesome. Christina the Sphinx, obviously here. Sam R09, Lav, Winner Design. I'm going to say Sam Sand forever. So just change your name on Google because that's the way it's going to be. Broke Black Man 94 is here, repping the house. I appreciate that very much. Biotic Flux, and thanks so much for being here. JD, of course. Always glad to represent JD's channel, doing some great stuff on his story. Speaking of fantasy, just love that story. So keep it up and bring us some more of that good stuff. So thanks for being here again, everybody, and I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. I never expected this to go the way it did as far as the great questions and the nuggets of wisdom that we got from ManaroGeekTV. If you're not subscribed to our channel, please go and check that out. I'm going to leave a link in the description below. So you guys check that out as well. Hope you have a great day and take care. We'll see you next time.